Longer than usual, but bear with me. If it looks like surrender and reads like surrender, the chances are it's a duck. The Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran is being presented as a diplomatic breakthrough. It's a dog. Yet one more Western agreement built upon wishful thinking and delusion. The idea that the radical Islamic regime can be persuaded to abandon its ideology and core objectives, if only it's shown the correct level of respect, given enough concessions and plenty of Western liberal incentives. Well, seriously? Here we have the Islamic regime doing what it does, behaving exactly in accordance with its DNA. And regrettably, though perhaps not surprisingly, the United States is also doing what it does. For nearly half a century, the Islamic Republic has lied, cheated, delayed, concealed, and violated its commitments to the international community. It sows chaos and war across the region, funds terrorists, destabilizes governments, arms proxies, murders dissidents, and brutally represses its own people. A regime that guns down protesters, hangs women and children from cranes, and slaughters its own citizens in their tens of thousands, it's hardly going to balk at misleading and manipulating Western negotiators. Indeed, it excels at just that. Despite all the evidence, Washington still appears to believe that ideology isn't the problem. The problem is the right incentives. That the extremists who chant death to America don't really mean it. They do. No matter how many hundreds of billions you offer them to play nice. Donald Trump described Barack Obama's nuclear deal with Iran as weak, naive, and one-sided. He argued America had surrendered leverage in exchange for promises. He complained sanctions relief had been granted before the fundamental problems had been resolved. Candidly, though, this agreement is even worse. The United States commits to ending military operations and lifting pressure while Iran receives much-needed time and respite. The regime was on the ropes. Sure, it would take time and effort and endurance, but there was a rare opportunity that should not have been missed. Trump has let them off the hook, and now they have 60 days to regroup, to rebuild, reposition, and reassert their authority. The nuclear issue, supposedly the central issue, is not resolved. The difficult questions, the ones that matter, have all been placed on the back burner. The Islamic regime is politely asked to reaffirm that it does not seek nuclear weapons. Easily done. We promise. Cross our hearts and hope to die. My, what a relief. And then there's the cash. Oh, lots of cash. Sanctions will be lifted, frozen funds will be made available. A reconstruction framework reportedly worth hundreds of billions of dollars is on the table. After decades of sponsoring terrorism, years of nuclear brinksmanship, turning much of the Middle East into a war zone with its proxies, Iran is being offered economic rehabilitation before the core issues have even been addressed, never mind settled. And all on the promise of play nice. I should remind Donald Trump that both Germany and Japan received aid and reconstruction only after unconditional surrender. Iran is getting it all in exchange for little more than a nod and a wink. To add insult to injury, Iran insists, and for some reason Trump has agreed, that Lebanon is to be part of this agreement. Do I have to remind Trump that the United States is not involved in hostilities in Lebanon and that Israel is not party to this deal? Agreeing to include Lebanon in this deal amounts to tacit acceptance of Iran's de facto occupation of Lebanon through its proxy Hezbollah. Lebanon is effectively held hostage by Hezbollah at the behest of Iran. Attaching Lebanon to this agreement only legitimizes the Iranian sabotage of Lebanese sovereignty, which has lasted for decades. It places additional and in many ways impossible constraints on Israel, while effectively giving Hezbollah a free pass, which only encourages the terror group to continue attacking the Jewish state. Iran is under no obligation to rein in its proxy, which only guarantees more fighting in Lebanon. As good an ally as he is, Israel cannot and will not fall on its sword or sacrifice its northern residents to placate the American president. Iran gains time, Hezbollah gains breathing space, and Israel gets limitations. Moreover, Iran's ability to control the Straits of Hormuz provides the ultimate leverage. One struggles to see the strategic brilliance of Trump's deal. Once again, there appears to be a woeful lack of understanding of both the region and the nature of radical Islam. Western policymakers persist in assuming that everyone ultimately wants the same things and everyone thinks the way they do, that these adversaries are simply negotiating partners with different interests rather than radical ideologues driven by fundamentally different and disturbing beliefs. The astonishing thing is that despite all evidence to the contrary, Western leaders continue to act deaf, dumb, and blind. Vice President J.D. Vance recently suggested that diplomacy could provide a path forward. The man genuinely believes that the regime can be persuaded to change its behaviour. So what exactly? Will they stop funding terror? Will they stop lying about their nuclear program? Will they stop destabilising the region through their proxies? Will they stop advocating for the destruction of Israel and calling for death to America and meaning it? Will they stop oppressing and slaughtering their own citizens? The Islamic regime knows exactly who and what it is. It knows exactly what it stands for and exactly what its aims are, and that it's ordained by God. Compromise is not in its lexicon. Whatever it takes, and God is great, are its mantras. This agreement does not read like the culmination of a successful campaign. It reads like a shameless and dangerous off-ramp, a document written by people desperate for a deal, negotiated with an adversary only too happy to take advantage. The irony? Trump inherited a position of strength. Iran was weaker than it had been in years. Its economy was struggling. Its regional position had deteriorated. Pressure was working. Its proxies had been battered. Yet Trump has squandered significant US military achievements, not to mention those of Israel. Because for all the bluster and bravado, it would seem that just like his predecessors, Donald Trump lacks the staying power and the grit to see the job through. With this deal, Trump has grasped defeat from the jaws of victory. Meanwhile, the Islamic regime is delighted. It emerges from this conflict in a stronger position despite its losses and significant military setbacks. And they do love their martyrs. America now looks weak. The region is once again being reminded that Washington's appetite for confrontation really matches its rhetoric. In the short term, oil prices will fall and the markets may rally. In the long term, however, the world has become a far more dangerous place. Trump has caved, and the world will pay the price. This latest capitulation presents the United States as unable to translate overwhelming military power into political and diplomatic achievement. The perception of a weak America only invites greater instability and more conflict. Trump has failed when it mattered most. Iran has just schooled the American president in the art of the deal.